Good evening, everyone. Happy to see all of you on Wednesday evening. On behalf of Just Being Center for Mindfulness and Presence, I welcome all of you to today's webinar on shifting our viewing lens from pathology to wellness. So, this webinar will introduce a presence oriented psychotherapy approach to anxiety and depression, and thereby inviting a shift from pathology based lens to that of wholeness. And therefore, rather than aiming only to reduce symptoms, it would also explore how meeting thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations with presence can become a doorway to understanding and integration. I'm very delighted to welcome our speaker for today, Sandy Andrade. She's an internationally certified MBCT teacher, mindfulness and presence oriented psychotherapist. She has been, in fact, practicing psychotherapy for several years, over 25 years. And she works with mindfulness and presence oriented psychotherapeutic approach. Her specialization, in fact, is in developmental trauma in adults. So, a very, very warm welcome to you, Sandy. And I would like to invite you to take us through this journey of shifting our perspective from pathology to wholeness. Over to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Gayatri, and welcome everyone. If we can put on our videos. Yeah. Hopefully, maybe we can have a little bit of an interactive session as well through this exploration, which is really for a short time. But let's see where we can go with this. So, like you all know, we are exploring this whole topic of shifting our viewing lens from pathology to wholeness, from a presence-oriented psychotherapy perspective, and particularly looking at anxiety and depression. So I'd just like to know, in terms of maybe just a show of hands, how many of you work with the clinical population? How many of you work with people with anxiety and depression? Right. Okay, I see some hands. Yeah. All right. So maybe along the way, you are very free to ask questions along the way, as well as we will also have time, perhaps, in terms of looking at questions at the end of the webinar. So the webinar we'll be looking at first, just this looking at shifting, what is this viewing lens that we're talking about? What does the shifting from pathology to wholeness really look like and mean? And then we'll be also looking at the MBIs, the mindfulness-based interventions, particularly the role of mindfulness and what changes when we are bringing mindfulness, when we are looking at depression and anxiety. And then we'll also look at the presence-oriented psychotherapy approach, and also talk about our upcoming 2-year program, which will start in August. Yes. So I have a few slides, and maybe we can look at some of the points from there. Yeah. So when we're looking at depression and anxiety, and we are talking about depression and anxiety, What is it that comes to your mind when you're seeing someone who is suffering from depression and anxiety? Just the first things, maybe we can have a few responses. You can just unmute and speak. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you're looking at a client suffering from depression and anxiety? Comments? How do we view this person? And maybe, yeah, there are some comments in chat, I think. Let's see. Distress and dysfunction, Nandini shares. Loneliness, yeah, sadness, low mood, anger, low or no self-belief, sadness, not being able to carry out normal activities, negative thought pattern, helplessness, hopelessness, restlessness, low energy. They may not be in touch with reality. Dysregulated nervous system, not interested in anything, someone not able to handle their emotions, sleepless nights, someone seems trapped in their thoughts, polarized paths, low self-esteem, all these things negatively affecting normal functioning, negative self-talk, despair, helplessness. Thank you. Yes. And I think we kind of covered a lot from the DSM as the expressions and the symptoms of depression and anxiety. We didn't have too much on anxiety, but depression, yes. Yeah. And so when we are immediately, somebody is coming and telling us they're suffering from depression and anxiety, we are looking at symptoms. Most of our training is in terms of looking at symptoms, looking at symptom reduction, or, looking at the deficits that are there that are not enabling them to lead the life that they want, to engage fully, to function. And then we are looking at trying to see how we can meet those deficits, how they can meet those deficits, and how we can support them. And what we are looking at is, can we look at depression and anxiety, not just from the lens of symptom reduction or deficit fixing? What would it look like? How would we see this person, this client coming to us if we were not looking through just the lens of how do I reduce the symptoms, or see that something is lacking in them and that's something that needs to be fixed in order for them to live well. So then what does it mean to see the person from a lens of wholeness? That inherently that there is nothing wrong. At a basic fundamental nature, there is nothing wrong. And these behaviors, which we are looking at as symptoms, are an expression of something that is going on for them, but it's not about who they are, and not at all about everything and all of who they are. Is just one piece of who they are. And that's one shift that we are looking at. Can we shift the lens, and what would it mean to look at this person as whole, not when as they recover, then they become whole. And in some way, if they have depression or anxiety or any other clinical condition, then there is something wrong that we need to fix. So it's really, as the therapist, as the practitioner, really working with this internal stance that we take of shifting it to not fixing, not trying to fix, and not coming from that space. So, not fixing, even though we will use tools and techniques, and it would require different ways in which we can support the person. Way to look at it from a lens of wholeness is in terms of it is these parts within them that feel depressed or anxious, and it's not the whole person. It is these parts. And can we bring a more welcoming attitude to really understand these parts? Can we approach it with some curiosity and really truly try and understand what is the underlying positive intent that these parts hold? What is the attempt of the system? What is this part really attempting to do? And it is in this listening and in this understanding that we can meet the whole person. So it's really looking at, even though there is depression, there is anxiety, yet can we see this from a lens of not fixing everything whole? So what helps is when we have presence as our fundamental viewing ground, like we have it in the presence-oriented psychotherapeutic approach and in the program that we teach at Just Being. Because from presence, we can see that that's the fundamental ground of wholeness. Presence is there, it's always present, it's ever present, and one can touch into it and tap into it, no matter what the condition, no matter what the symptoms, no matter what the behavior. Looking at mood disorders like depression and anxiety, of course, there are also at a behavioral level that we also need to kind of come in a supportive way. But can we look at behavioral change, a behavioral shift? Again, the shift not in terms of symptom reduction, but towards a valued direction. What is it that I want to move towards rather than what is it that I want to move away from? So as much as the client is grappling with this, it is actually also the therapist grappling with these kind of the stance, this ground on which to, from which to kind of come in, from which to relate to. And that does impact the relational space, that impacts how the person feels received and seen, and also seen as okay. Another kind of where we can kind of dismantle just looking at this just from a symptom reduction point of view is to also see that it is also the physiology involved, and it is also a nervous system response. So where if the nervous system receives support, and again, it's not about regulating the client, but really in terms of supporting the the person to really be present to what they are experiencing. Both depression and anxiety, as we know, are it's a lot about thoughts and the thought loops that we kind of like move in repeatedly, and not being able to step out of it, and that loop getting more and more constricted, more and more narrow, right? And the concomitant kind of shift that happens where emotions are concerned and where the body is concerned. So from yeah, just want to leave you with this also, that our essential self, which is presence, and our core is always intact. Yeah. So that's the viewing ground. And a little bit about, before we go into the thoughts around it, let's just understand what is also mindfulness, because mindfulness is quite core, whether it is in presence-oriented psychotherapy, whether it is in the mindfulness-based interventions. So, and while we may have an understanding of mindfulness, let's look at what it is. Right? And as we're doing that, I'd also invite you to kind of just come into being present in the body, sensing your feet on the ground, just as you're listening. Yeah, sensing the seat. You're really looking at mindfulness as a pathway to presence, to our essential self. And it's the practice, and it is a practice of coming in touch with an ever-present awareness, or just this knowing quality of the mind. And along with the knowing quality, there is also an intimacy of experience as we practice mindfulness. So the practice involves an embodied awareness of our experience moment to moment, with an attitude of non-judgment, being open, curious, and kind. And our experience, all that we call as our experience, is really coming together of these various thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Yeah. So any of these can be the entry point where we can kind of be present with it. So we were talking about the thoughts, feelings, sensations, and why that might be an important piece when we are looking at depression, anxiety, and when we are looking at how do we approach the client from a sense of wholeness, and how can the client come into that sense of wholeness or presence themselves. So we look at two of the MBIs, MBCT, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and we look at acceptance commitment therapy very briefly, just to understand some core concepts and approaches which we might be able to bring into what we're doing. So something which MBCT really kind of highlights is what's called decentering. And so when you are really caught up, like we said, in this thought loop, in just thoughts, how can I decenter from this thought cycle? Now, your usual CBT techniques have it by, looking at those thoughts and beliefs and in some way challenging it and reframing it, like replacing it with another thought. When you add mindfulness to things, it changes the view a bit. Because, like we said, we are not trying to change something. We are not coming from something is wrong and we have to right it. We are not coming from the view of fixing. So then the approach is, how can I decenter from this thought cycle? Where is my standing ground? And so the standing ground is because thoughts, feelings, and sensations, they are happening together. They are happening all at once. And so the viewing ground, the place from which to view our experience, we are looking at as through the bodily sensations, the feeling sensation in the body. And so that's the decentering. Okay. So we are coming into the body. And we are looking at these thoughts, feelings, sensation loop. We'll talk a little bit more about this because it's an important component, especially pertinent when we are looking at depression and anxiety. But when you add mindfulness to the mix, it doesn't become just about what I'm suffering from and how to get out of it. It broadens the view on how do I want to live my life, what's important to me. Similarly, in acceptance commitment therapy, we have a present moment focus there. And something that ACT therapists really kind of like work with is what's called this experiential avoidance. Now, we all, by virtue of being human, we all experience this. And what this means is that we don't want to experience something that feels negative. It, of course, makes sense not to experience a feeling that it feels too heavy or to encounter sadness or to encounter discomfort. Our first response to that is in terms of moving away from it and trying very hard to move away from it. And so in all of the MBIs and in any kind of mindfulness-based approach, and especially ACT, the movement is moving towards what is uncomfortable. And befriending that in some way. And that's how, by being with this, being with our experience, just as it shows up, that's the acceptance that comes, not that as a cognitive sense of I accept this, but as a felt sense of acceptance that this is what is going on. This sad feeling, this thought is what is going on. And another aspect of this is in terms of also moving towards our valued direction, towards what is it that we want, rather than away from. So it's another way of looking at being with challenging emotions and thoughts. So as the therapist, one can simply, of course, know from our own internal experience as we stay with our own feelings, thoughts, sensations, that what is arising is a thought, or this is a feeling, or this is a sensation. And supporting clients to notice that by simply reflecting that back. Like, for example, you might simply say that, oh, you're noticing this thought. or you're noticing these feelings come up when you have this thought. And I'm wondering what's happening in the body as you are experiencing this thought. Or as you are experiencing this feeling, what is it that you're noticing in the body? So we keep bringing attention back and developing a capacity over a period of time to be able to be with very directly with the feeling sensation in the body. As we do that, there are a few things that happen. One is I am not so caught up in this thought cycle. So there is a space that gets created, a space between I am thinking this to I am feeling this, and that's okay. I am sensing this in the body, and it's part of the same experience. It's just another way of being with it. The other thing that that happens with this is that I get in touch more directly with the feeling sensation. And as I allow the feeling sensation, one, my physiology is able to integrate that feeling sensation, allow it to flow through the body. Yeah. And also, I may get in touch with the underlying dynamics of this experience. What is it that allowed this experience to form in the first place? Whether that is a trauma imprint, whether that is something that is there that is stored unconsciously or consciously in memory, that's something that we can be in touch with. Okay, so this is just in terms of what's happening also in the brain when we are doing that, is that when I'm really high in this emotional zone, it's really the limbic system and also the reptilian brain also kind of like getting involved, the brainstem getting involved in this response, right? And the threat response getting activated, which further complicates things. When we are bringing this present moment awareness, being really present here and now, moving really slowly with the client, just moment to moment, then what's happening in the brain is that the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain, the part that's able to just see what is going on, that helps us with decision making, that part comes online. And so very simple things where somebody is feeling really overwhelmed with this emotion or having a hard time just being present in the body. And we kind of slow it down, titrate it a bit, ask them maybe, what do you see around you? What are the colors that you're seeing? So they are being present, but the attention is then focused more externally to something. And that helps them because when you're naming colors, you're also engaging the prefrontal cortex. So it really helps with also involving and including the physiology, involving the body. Because when we go into the body, we need to also have some ways in which we can kind of support the physiology. Now, it's not like the physiology is dysregulated, so just let's regulate it. And that everything needs to, my client needs to be regulated all the time. Not necessarily. When I'm having a strong emotion, yes, there's a certain amount of dysregulation. Is the client being able to be present with it? That's the crucial bit. Or is it too overwhelming that the nervous system really cannot cope with this? So if I'm present even with a strong emotion, am I still in the window of tolerance? And a few things are helping in this. One is the therapist's own presence, their own self being grounded, being centered, being not kind of trying to shift the client immediately from what they are experiencing, but really being interested, being curious, listening to what the body mind of the client wants to do, wants to move with. Because again, the viewing lens is that this is an intelligence system. It formed these depressive patterns also, or these anxious cycles also out of some basic intelligence. It was trying to do something. So let's understand what that is. What's it attempting to do? And we just support from, like in anxiety, there can be this people moving into a hyperarousal zone. On depression, it's more the hypoarousal zone. And so slowly, bit by bit, increasing that capacity or widening that window of tolerance. So we are seeing that to take this view that we are really operating from presence. And what is presence? Yeah. What is this foundational level of our being? So it's more an unconditioned, spacious, less identified sense of self with the body as reference point. Yeah. So it's the unconditioned. And it can be there with the conditions. It's not an either or. So there's always access to our wholeness and who we are fundamentally. There's always access to an inner wisdom and knowing. And the task is to be able to listen to that, which means that the therapist is also moving from presence. So it is the embodied presence of the practitioners. Also the embodiment of whatever are the attitudes that we wish to hold, like the sense of curiosity, a certain kindness that is there towards whatever is showing up. And very much the task is of the therapist to really wait with and really acknowledge what is it that is coming up. Maybe a part that says, hurry up, or what will this client kind of think of me, or shouldn't I try to make this client feel better? And really encountering those parts within us and, yeah, just acknowledging and turning our attention towards the client. So presence is this ever-present, unconditional, spacious, less identified sense of self. And really the markers of presence are where there is an embodied sense of grounding, so of intimacy and connection, and it feels spacious all at once. It can hold all. It can be with all. So that's what we hold in a presence-oriented psychotherapeutic approach. in this approach, there are three elements that we look at and that are important for the therapeutic encounter. One is the presence of the therapist, the presence in the relational field, because there's the co-regulation can also really support the client. And then the presence for the client. How do I support the client coming into presence? And all of this is part of the 2-year part-time program for mental health professionals that we offer, where it's kind of split into 5-day modules every 2 or 3 months, where we are looking at mindfulness, we're looking at presence really for the therapist in the relational field, and how to hold everything that comes up, and needing to know maybe attachment work and how that shows up, looking at things like secure attachment or working with the physiology, or how do we also shift into relating to the parts. Or working with the subtle energy body. So all of that is part of the quite a comprehensive training. I want to end with this quote. This is by Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist nun. And it so very much captures what happens in the therapeutic contact when we are moment to moment with the client, and just touching into maybe this feeling, this sensation that is arising. And that feeling sensation is also revealing something that the client is holding. There is a teaching that says that behind all hardening and tightening and rigidity of the heart, there's always fear. But if you touch fear, behind fear, there is a soft spot. And if you touch that soft spot, you find the vast blue sky. You find that which is ineffable, ungraspable, and unbiased. That which can support and awaken us at any time. Gayatri will share more details of the program, and I can leave this later for you. But maybe what we can do is also open it up to any questions or any sharings also, that from our own experience. And yeah, so really opening some space for that. I just also want to share, when we are talking about, moving with the paths, that there is, like when a client is saying that, yes, there is this sadness, and to just reflect it back as, yeah, you're noticing something like sadness, something in you feeling sad, some part of you feeling sad. And that's and what's happening with that is as we're just reflecting it that way, what the client is receiving, yes, it's not all of me. It's this place that's sad. Now I have more self energy. I can, as myself, be with the sadness. I am not fully consumed and totally enmeshed in that sadness. So there's some space between what I'm feeling and myself, and I can hold that with care. And the care is coming from the therapist, but the care is also coming in terms of maybe bringing in touch, bringing in this way of being with the sadness and allowing it. and seeing what comes up as we stay with the sadness. Yeah. Any questions or anything that we want to share?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
hi,
Lee.
sir. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, if the course is for only for the people working with mental health, this, or is it open for everyone?
Well, the course is for mental health professionals, like if you're working with people. But we have another course that is open to everyone, which is a 1 year course, which is mindfulness based counseling, listening with embodied presence, which is based on similar principles, but it also focuses on really being able to hold space. So very often we find people doing the 1 year, and then if they choose, they do the 2 years as well.
Can I get the details for this 1 year, and is it for working professionals, or is it?
Yes, it can also be for working professional. Both are part-time courses. They're meant to be part-time. So along with whatever you're doing, that's of course you have to make time and space for the course because it is quite immersive. But yeah, it's there for it can be done while we are working.
Can you share the details, like
I
anywhere?
think Gayatri has shared the details in chat.
I'll
Yeah,
check it.
put the
Yeah.
details of both the trainings. You can check it on the chat, and I've also put the contact whom you can reach out to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Someone is asking whether there is a shorter term course of 3 months or 6 months. Actually, we don't have that, Nehi, because, to uh, to even move into something like mindfulness, when you're really practicing it in an embodied way, it does take time to kind of digest, to kind of practice on your own, to know it from the inside out. So it's not something that we just do as techniques and tools with clients, but it is really understanding how can we be with the client from the inside out. So yeah, so the 1 year gives that kind of like thing, and in the 2 years we're going more into the therapeutics of it, uh, eh, like for example, also working with trauma imprints that show up and how we can enter into those spaces. Yeah, Tarini.
Hi, thank you for the session. I had a question about how you think you can navigate what almost feels like this polarity between what you describe as completely accepting the client as they are and as they're showing up, but at the same time supporting a movement or change in a valued direction that might be different from where they are, without experiencing that as resistance to their present experience.
Yes, thank you, Tarini. That's a great question in terms of, yeah. So we are not shifting the client's perspective, actually. We're just being curious about, for example, uh, what's the what's the life that they want to lead? Somebody with depression and anxiety, they're very focused on that this is what is happening to me, and I cannot live the life I want to live unless I get in some way and they are encountering that because it is so intense. In some way, if I can, get rid of this, then I'll be able to live the life I want. So it is a do this and then life will start. But we are inviting another approach very gently in terms of asking, what is the life that you would want to lead? Let's say if you didn't have all of this, what would be your life? What do you see for yourself? Yeah. And then from what they are saying, like, how might it be if despite this, what you are facing, what would it be like to take one step in that valued direction? Yeah. So you're holding this possibility for them, right? And of course, if they're encountering that, that one part may come up, saying that, no, I mean, I cannot. I mean, it is impossible to do anything when I'm feeling this way, right? So then we make space for this part that's feeling like it is impossible. Yeah, something in you really feels like it's impossible to do this, to even have this life, even if, there is this maybe a sadness or this anxiety. So what's going on for this place? And we make space for that place as well. So we're really listening in without trying to, move them. Yeah. So the movement is kind of like happening. And in some way, it's also encountering the, like what you're calling as resistance, but to look at it as maybe there's something protective that exists within them that is afraid also of what might happen if I don't have this, if I don't operate from here, right? That I always need to look out if there is something bad going to happen. Yeah. So, or I feel, or it might uncover a deeper belief that is there. And so just allowing that to kind of surface as it might, but at the same time, especially with depression, because the physiology doesn't move, it's used to a certain pattern. And so bringing in some movement is helpful, right? Some kind of sense of agency. And however small that task might be, however little it might be, but to have that kind of like come in without force. Right? Yeah. So in some way, and this is really quite central in ACT of holding these two. So you have acceptance and mindfulness and being present on one side, and then you have the commitment. It's acceptance commitment therapy. It's what am I committing to as as something that I will engage in. So it is movement along with acceptance. It's also really assessing like where the client is and what might be needed. Sometimes when there's clinical depression, there is really actually initially no scope for even bringing in mindfulness. So then it would be more in terms of supporting the client, listening to them, giving space for what is their experience really, and what is their struggle. And at a behavioral level, what is it that is something that they can engage with? And then when there is more stability in the system, as we're doing, little by little, bringing a little bodily awareness, moving out of that thought, feeling, sensation, that loop, and coming into more feeling, sensation, and creating more capacity in the body, that's when we can move more into being very present and really listening in. So there was a client I was kind of like working with, which was, she came in with feeling anxious, but there was also depression. And she was a young client, a college-going student. And it was pretty, in terms of, it was quite a bit in terms of where she couldn't move out of the house at all. So she stopped going to college, she stopped meeting friends, she stopped everything, and she would just be in her house. That's when we started the sessions, that fear was like really like terror of that if I move out, then something bad will happen, and not knowing what that might be, but something bad that could happen. And so our initial sessions were just in terms of just listening to her experience, just from and as the practitioner of really practicing being very grounded, being very centered, being curious, being open to what is this like for her from her point of view, right? And as we started, there was also a lot of resourcing that was done in terms of basically safety resources, like what makes her feel safe. And in one of the sessions, she, just to kind of highlight the level of fear, and then that really, as we listen, it really brings us into that sense of connection, because we really understand this level of fear that it is almost impossible to move out of. And in one of the sessions, when we were talking about a safe place, that the safe place for me would be if I could put myself in a steel cylinder and just be there with no windows, no doors. And I said, if it had an opening, where would it be? So just on top, maybe, right? But really that solid that nobody could kind of like come in. But we use that as that imagery that if you're in this cylinder, then how does it feel being there? And she said, that feels safe. And of course, the physiology is also responding with that. So with that, in terms of just bringing it in terms of, can you sense that now in the body? This feeling of safety. And so even accessing the body is a slow process. It's a step-by-step process of then just allowing the sense of safety and then building more safety, like in her own space. Where does it feel safe? Where is it comfortable? In her relationships, like with her mother, there was a sense of comfort. So bringing those aspects in. So also the view is getting a little more broader. And then taking steps like we were asking in terms of at a behavioral level, when there was some sense of safety, an experience of safety, an experience of okayness coming in, which she could access. And then bring in how might it be that despite, like, what is she missing because of this? What is she longing for? And she did want to kind of not interact with people, but she did want to learn and study, and there were all of those things. So how might it be, despite this anxious feeling, this dread that is there, to be able to just maybe step out and see how that is? Not for long, not going to, but just stepping out and then just sensing the sense of safety. So just bit by bit, engaging the behavior as well. Yeah. But no force. If the person is not ready, then this part is not ready. Then we stay with this part that's not ready in terms of really understanding its fears, and what it might need, and how that can be brought in either through a resource or through self or just in the relational space. With this client, as we were with the feeling sensation in the body, there was, and as she was in touch with it, that's where she touched into also the trauma imprint. And then we could work more directly. So it was working at many levels. It was working with the underlying trauma imprint that was keeping these things in place. It was working with the feelings of fear and dread and having more capacity to kind of like allow that, to be with that, with the resourcing. Yeah. But not from the view of fixing, that you need to get better. And the direction is coming more from the client's process, with what is unfolding, just then that's actually directing what's the next step.
I have a question, Sandy.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me, like, when we start, let's say after doing the course, when we start practicing this, we regularly meet clients who are anxious, depressed, and are having constant problems. So when we are into an immersive session with them, the techniques that we have learned, we'll try to apply them. We'll try to use our presence to heal them, to be there for them. But doesn't their sense of anxiety and like sadness affect the mindfulness coach as well, like the person who's practicing it?
Yeah, so you're talking about how like the client's experience and their strong emotions has impact on the therapist,
Yes.
right? And we are really working in a very attuned way. So we are really feeling with the client as well. We are also sensing into our own body. But as we are
Yes.
doing that, and as we are in presence, presence really is that ground which can hold everything. So we are not working from a part of the therapist. And also, if we are working with the body and we are also engaged in our own bodily sense, then we are also developing our own capacity through the course also. We are developing our own capacity to allow for these emotions within ourselves, where it's not kind of getting mixed with our own experience. So how can we allow that simultaneously to be there within us, to allow it to flow through our own physiology, right? And to be grounded and there for the client. And a lot of this work is actually done in resonance, because when we are attuned, we are picking up, our bodies are also picking up. There's a lot of communication actually that happens, whether we know it or not, that is happening more right brain to right brain between therapist and client in any kind of intimate relationship. So, so there is a lot of what is unspoken, what is happening at the level of the body, at the level of energetic patterns. All of that is playing out. It's not just the words, right? So we're really listening from our whole self. And as we're listening from our whole self, we're also developing our capacity through the course as well to kind of like be in presence and allow for it without it kind of, really kind of hitting hard.
Thank you. Understood. And Sandy, like, I am a person who has no previous experience of psychotherapy or whatsoever. I'm into IT, like a totally different sector. I got an interest into this because I was in a really anxious state, or I don't know, the starting of depression, and I had got counseled from one of the very finest therapists from Just Being itself. That is when I developed interest for this. So now, when I think of pursuing this, like learning this course, what would you suggest for me? Like
It
the
could be
full
then the 1 year course that you could look at.
the
Yeah.
1 year course, and I do not stay in Pune, so it can be done fully
Done
online.
online. Yes. So both the courses are offered in a hybrid way. So you can do it online or in person. So the online and in person, they meet together. And even in the 1 year course, it is a step-by-step process where we kind of like, each module building on the other. And then we are
Okay.
looking at more and more applications. Yeah. So the 1 year is more suitable for those without a background who are choosing to enter into this field. It just supports you in just holding a listening space for people in an embodied way from embodied
Okay.
presence. And the 2 years is looking at a little bit of what we were talking about, where we're looking at the underlying therapeutic, workings or like
Yes.
what's happening in terms of attachment, what's happening in the physiology, how do we support that? And the 1 year touches into that, but doesn't go
Hmm.
into greater detail.
So, what are the career opportunities I can have at the end of 1 year?
Where well the course equips you to be able to hold listening spaces for others, whether they are
Oh,
individual spaces or group spaces.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we've also come to the end of our time, and yes, Gayatri has shared the details, and I also have it here. Somebody was asking about this quote, and here it is. Yeah. Where you can have more details, the website, which is justbeingcenter.com, or you can write to us or just contact Shilpi, who's the trainings coordinator, on this number. Okay. Yeah, Samar?
Gayatri, would it be possible for the team to mail us the details of both the courses?
Yes, we
Uh,
can email you the details of both the courses. We will anyway be sharing the recording. So with that, we can also share with you the details, of both the courses. Yeah.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Hi, Gayatri. Would you mind sharing that quote again? Because I didn't capture it. I'm sorry.
Yes, I can do that, and we can read it out as also a closing. There is a teaching that says that behind all hardening and tightening and rigidity of the heart, there's always fear. But if you touch fear, behind fear, there is a soft spot. And if you touch that soft spot, you find the vast blue sky. You find that which is ineffable, ungraspable, and unbiased. that which can support and awaken us at any time.
Thank you very much. Beautiful quote.
Yes, and with that, maybe we can take a minute or two to just come just into ourselves. Sensing our feet on the ground. Sensing the seat. Just being present, acknowledging whatever is here for us. Feeling some sensation. Just letting everything be just as is. It's for our time spent together. Wishing well for each person here. Having a desire to know something, to engage with something. Whatever it is that brought you to the webinar. So just wishing each other well and receiving that for yourself as well. Okay. So we'll end here, we'll be in touch and we'll share more details.
Thanks, Sandy.